Cabinda Refinery in Angola has started operation, and if you ask me, those are actually very good news, because this is a conversation that probably needs to be happening in all oil producing nations in Africa, that probably there is need for a country that is producing oil to also have the capacity to process it, not only for domestic consumption but also export, export market, whereby you're not just exporting raw materials into the international markets, but you are also being able to process and add value to the oil and gas that you are producing in your country. Now, when it comes to the Cabinda refinery in Angola, at the moment, it might not solve the entire domestic demand, because it's processing at the rate of 30,000 barrels per day, which is probably not enough to solve the entire needs or petroleum needs of the Angolan economy. But at least that is a step in the right direction, and you can only commend the work that has gone into it, the investment that has gone into it, and the fact that the Angolan government and the Angolan people are supporting such initiatives. If you look at it, for a long time, African countries that produce oil have not been processing their crude oil. They have been selling it low and, yes, generating income from selling crude oil. But that has been at the expense of, local industries, as well as not growing the industry beyond the production of oil and gas resources. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and on this YouTube channel, I talk about oil and gas and the opportunities that are available across the upstream oil and gas sector. And I have a newsletter where I share more of these resources, insights, and business ideas that you can be able to tap into. And if you do want, I'll leave a link in the description below for you to join that community. And it is good to know that the Cabinda refinery will increase its capacity as time goes by and as investors continue to invest more resources to increase the capacity of that refinery, which is also a positive direction given that investment is being made into the Angolan oil and gas sector, which would benefit not only the investors who are going to get a return on their investment, but as well as the people of Angola. I think there has been a sort of a subtle change of mindset in Africa and also across the world in countries that produce oil and gas, that it does not make a lot of sense for you to produce something, sell it to outside market or international market, and then be left suffering because you cannot be able to process that particular resource. And I think that is one thing that I like about the current oil and gas market in the world. And even if there are challenges that are existing in the market because of geopolitics and sometimes conflicts like the one in Middle East, I think that has given people an opportunity to be able to, kind of see what it is that they can be able to do to solve some of the challenges that are emerging. Over the last couple of years, Angola has taken deliberate steps to improve their upstream oil and gas industry and to make it attractive to investors, while also becoming a country that actually solves some of the problems that exist within the country. And a refinery is a step in the right direction, because having Cabinda refinery at least processing over 30,000 barrels of oil per day, and with plans to actually increase capacity of that refinery, is something that shows that in the next couple of years, Angola will at least solve one of the issues that affect a lot of oil and gas producing countries, that they will not be having a problem solving the domestic demand when it comes to petroleum products. The good thing about having Cabinda oil refinery coming into operations is the fact that this is actually adding into an already existing capacity when it comes to the refinery of oil and gas in Angola. And this is because Angola already has an existing oil refinery in Rwanda, which is actually owned by the National Oil Sonangol. And having all this refining capacity within the country is actually a very positive thing when you think about it, because Angola is an oil producing country, and when you have a resource like oil and gas within the country, I think it should actually go in towards helping solve one of the problems that you already have as a country, and that is being able to actually solve the domestic consumption problem. You should not actually produce oil and gas and then export it, then import the finished product, which is what a number of countries in Africa and also across the world has been doing. I think it makes a lot of sense if you have an oil and gas resource in a country, you should at least process it to solve the domestic problem so that you do not have to rely on importing finished petroleum products. A country that produces oil should not have its people paying very high prices to access the same petroleum products. At least as a minimum, Angolans should be able to pay less money to access the petroleum products that they need for their day-to-day activities. And I think that's the benefit of having, a Cabinda and a Rwanda refineries in place, because over the long term, and with all the investments that are going into modernizing the Rwanda refinery, over the long term, you are going to have a lot of capacity when it comes to the refined products in Angola. And that to me is actually a very positive thing. And it gives confidence to the people who would want to invest in the oil and gas sector in Angola that there is actually deliberate effort to ensure that the oil and gas industry in Angola is working, it is attractive to investment, and that you can actually be able to play a role across the oil and gas value chain. You can get involved in the upstream sector in Angola, you can play in the midstream sector in Angola, and you can also be involved in the downstream oil and gas industry in Angola. Now, if you are an investor, if you are an entrepreneur, or even a professional who is interested in getting involved in the oil and gas industry in Angola, I think you should first take time to actually understand the industry, understand the particulars of the oil and gas industry in Angola, and take time to fully look at the opportunities that you can be able to tap into when it comes to the oil and gas in Angola. And you can only start this conversation or this particular journey by learning how the oil and gas operates, learning the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream oil and gas sector. When you can be able to understand that value chain, it becomes clear for you where such opportunities as refineries or, getting involved in the midstream oil and gas sector in a country actually becomes available. You start seeing opportunities that you probably would not have seen if you did not take time to study and understand oil and gas value chain. And if that's a conversation or something that you would want help with, I will put a link in the description below for you to book a 1-hour call with me, and we can be able to look at how you can get involved in the oil and gas sector, and particularly how you can tap into the opportunities that exist across the upstream oil and gas sector. And this is going to be it from me today when it comes to this particular video. And if you'd want to learn more about what is going on in the oil and gas industry, watch the video on your screen right now. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not, and I'm going to see you in my next video.